What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from Hook'emHeadlines.com coming back at y'all today with my post-game reaction video. I know first one in a few weeks here, but wanted to do one just because this was such a big game for Texas, and like to get back into it with with a pretty imperative postseason coming up for Texas. But Texas gets the massive 57-7 win tonight over Texas Tech. One of those things where I just can't really believe that I'm saying that for the final score. A lot of crazy stuff happened in this game for Texas. The fact that you actually get Arch Manning in the game in the third quarter, it's just insane. I personally predicted this score to be a 10-point game, and so this is great for Texas. But they advanced to the Big 12 championship game for the first time in over a decade. Finished the regular season up 11-1, 8-1 in Big 12 play. Just a massive success for Steve Sarkisian in his third year at the helm. The Longhorns kept their foot on the gas in the entire game. Really can't say enough about the way that Texas played on both sides of the ball throughout most of this game. I'll get into more of this in a second with my takeaways and everything, but I thought that Texas played really well. The defense was absolutely dominant. The offense ran the ball well, over 300 rushing yards in this game. I thought Jaden Blue played really well. Savion Red got a heavy helping of carries. Keelan Robinson got involved a little bit. But again, mostly the Jaden Blue and Savion Red show on the ground. Unfortunately, due to an injury that CJ Baxter Jr. suffered in this game, that knocked him out the rest of the way. So we'll follow up on that, see what Steve Sarkisian has to say on that in the post-game press conference. Obviously, we will keep you all updated on the site as always as well. I think Texas looked really, really good on defense. The defense held Texas Tech to 88 passing yards. It's only the second time in the last, at least going back to 2015 was as far as I could go back counting those records, but that Texas Tech had 88 passing yards and no passing touchdowns. They also had 3 interceptions. Baron Morton had some decent throws in this game. His wide receivers weren't making a whole lot of plays for him, but Texas's defense, the secondary, was just ball hawking really the entire night. From that impressive interception early in the game by Malik Muhammad, the first interception of his career where he just completely snatched the ball from Jaron Bradley, to a nice interception from Terrence Brooks, to Jett Bush taking back a pick six on off the shoelaces of a Texas Tech player. That's the type of night it was for Texas and Texas Tech, where Jett Bush is able to get a 43-yard pick six in the second half. Texas all around, all facets of this game were working for the Longhorns. I'll go ahead and get into some of my takeaways for this game after I do want to talk about a few more game notes and what's coming up for Texas, which I usually do at the end of the video. But since we're going to the Big 12 championship game and you still got a spot in the college football playoff on the line, I kind of want to talk about that first. So Texas, is going to the Big 12 championship game. Now you lock that up again, first time. It's the first time since 2018 that Texas will be headed to the Big 12 championship game. They have a chance to win the Big 12 title for the first time in over a decade, and they're still in the running for a spot in the college football playoff. This this can be a monumental season for the Longhorns before heading to the SEC in 2024. Really what Texas has been wanting out of from being in the Big 12 for the last decade now. And so just Texas will now face either Oklahoma State or Kansas State, I do believe, in the Big 12 championship game. OU did win today, but by my understanding, the Big 12 tiebreakers, I think OU is now eliminated if Kansas State wins tomorrow. Kansas State faces Iowa State, and then Oklahoma State faces BYU. Both teams are favored. I think both teams are favored by double digits. I know Oklahoma State is a 17-point favorite at the time being from Caesars Sportsbook. I will check right now on the Kansas State front, but I do know for Oklahoma State, they have the best chance to get into the Big 12 championship game right now. BYU is not a team that's been playing super well, especially on the road lately. It's a team that lost 35-6 to Texas against Malik Murphy, the backup quarterback for Texas. And they've really, outside of, putting an upset scare into OU last week with Dylan Gabriel going down, they really have been getting blown out quite a bit, including a 45-13 loss against Iowa State a few weeks ago. Iowa State is a 10-point underdog against Kansas State in Manhattan. That can be a close game. Iowa State's been pretty good this year. especially in Big 12 play. But Kansas State, I think, is a pretty good team that should be able to take care of business at home. So we'll see. If one of those teams slips up, then you can still have a kind of a chaos scenario. We'll see tomorrow. But Texas, you're in Arlington. You're in the Big 12 championship game. You still have a spot in the playoff. Now, the playoff is a bigger conversation because you still need some help from some other teams. Oregon won big against a top 25 opponent today in Oregon State. Oregon's really been searching for that marquee victory. At the time, it seems like they had that against Utah, who was in the top 20 when they beat them 35-6 in Salt Lake City. But Utah has since kind of dropped out of the rankings for college football playoff in the AP poll. Oregon hasn't really had that marquee win since. They only beat USC by 9 at home. They lost to Washington on the road. And then, Oregon State tonight, who lost by 2 points last week to Washington, another playoff contender, was your opportunity. And Oregon State, last time I checked, was up 31-7. They end up winning that game by that same score. So still something worth watching here. I still think Texas has the best win in the nation. Florida State plays tomorrow against Florida. A loss by the Seminoles to the Gators would definitely help Texas in that spot. Alabama plays Auburn. I don't think you can expect much there. Same thing with Georgia against Georgia Tech. Those should be big wins for each team, especially Auburn losing by, 24 points to New Mexico State last week. So I think that could end up being a blowout in the Iron Bowl, but we'll see. And then you got the game tomorrow, Ohio State, Michigan. That's the big one. But either way, you probably have a Big Ten team knocked out. So Texas right now, you need a little bit of help around you, but you're still in the playoff conversation. If you win out, you still have a very good chance of getting into the playoff. I think better than a coin flip. So you just got to win next weekend in Arlington. So let me get on to some of my game notes now, and then I'll move into my takeaways. I don't really have any duds, so I'll just mention some nods from this game for particular players that I thought were really big standouts. But yeah, let's go and get into my takeaways. So I posted the article on the site a few minutes ago, and I'll link that below in the description as always. But the first thing, Jaden Blue and Keelan Robinson, I thought their sparks the offense and special teams in the first half and on the first play of the second half were really big difference makers, and really allowed Texas to not only keep its foot on the gas but put Texas Tech away completely, by early in the third quarter. So Jaden Blue, Texas was up 10-7 on the first play of the second quarter. He ends up taking a 69-yard run, career-long rushing touchdown to the house, and just really turned on the burners, completely blew past the Texas Tech defenders, and that gave Texas a 17-7 lead at the time. Jaden Blue in this game ends up rushing for 121 yards on 10 carries. So of course, most of those coming from that 69-yard touchdown run, but he had a few other nice runs in this one as well. All-around efficient, which Texas really needed because C.J. Baxter Jr. ended up with a game-ending injury. You kind of turned it over to guys like Jaden Blue, Keelan Robinson, a lot of Savion Red in this game, rushed for over 50 yards. Keelan Robinson in this game, he had the first touchdown. Sark motioned him out. I actually don't. I think he just ended up swinging out for a pass that it was a backward pass from Quinn Ewers to Keelan for a 9-yard touchdown. Ended up counting as a touchdown run. But the first touchdown of the season for Keelan, he's had some injury issues that he's had to work through, but looked like he was fully healthy in this game. Very, very good. So he had the first touchdown of the first half. He wound up having the first touchdown of the second half on a long and just a really, really nice 95-yard touchdown or kick return for a touchdown. Texas at the time was ahead by 26-7, and that put him ahead 33-7. Texas with those double-digit leads in the second half, it's been their kryptonite in the last few years. And Keelan Robinson housing a kick return for a touchdown to open up the second half, I think that was really the nail in the coffin for Texas Tech. You could really feel at that point that Texas was going to keep its foot on the gas, and they did the rest of the way. I think I said it earlier in the video, we'll continue to monitor C.J. Baxter's status. That's going to be key, especially with Jonathan Brooks out for the rest of the season with an ACL tear. Because Texas at this point, you still got some good running back depth. Trey Wisner got his first career rushing touchdown in this game, I should mention, but you still need Baxter back if you want to push for the push for the college football playoff and ultimately make sure that you feel good about your chances in the Big 12 championship game. My next takeaway from this game is just the defense. I said that, just Texas defense dominated Texas Tech, but it was the way they did it and, just how good they were in pass defense. Even in run defense, Taj Brooks ended up reaching, I believe, exactly 100 net yards in this game. At least I follow sidearm stats, so they're the ones that track it, but I believe net yards was exactly at 100, and so that would be his fifth consecutive 100 rushing yard game. I mean, watching him in this game, you can just see it. He is a very, very special running back. It's extremely difficult to bring him down. Multiple explosive plays where he just fights through tackles. And he was really Texas Tech's only source of offense. I think Texas Tech was held under 200 total yards of offense in this game. Finished up with 198. And so Taj Brooks had over half of it. And that's really been the story for Texas Tech in the second half of the season. They had won 3 consecutive games heading into this one against Texas. Taj Brooks feeding him the ball and taking care of the football. I mentioned that in our pregame preview that I posted technically earlier today, but that's been their recipe for success. And Taj Brooks was there. He had 100 rushing yards in this game, despite Texas having a really, really good rushing defense that really showed up in this game and was dominant up front. But I say dominant, but outside of a few nice plays from Taj Brooks where he was able to pick up a bunch of yards after contact. I'll be interested to see what his yards after contact was in this game, because I've got to imagine his yards after contact will be at least 70 or 80% of his rushing yards. He was very good. But outside of that, Baron Morton, 88 passing yards, 3 interceptions, 1 rushing touchdown, no passing touchdowns. I think I mentioned it earlier in the video. This is the first time in at least 7-8 years that Texas Tech has been held under 100 passing yards, but also had multiple interceptions. Oklahoma State held them under 100 passing yards in 2021 in a shutout victory, but I don't think they had any interceptions in that game. So, Texas got some big plays from the DBs in this one. Malik Muhammad, again, snatched the ball from Jaron Bradley. Terrence Brooks, Jett Bush, just some nice plays for interceptions in this game. And the pass rush was great, too. Multiple sacks. You got Anthony Hill getting involved for a third down sack. Jalen Ford getting some pressure on the quarterback. Alfred Collins getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, which helped result in the Malik Muhammad interception. And Devondre Sweat, I think, multiple TFLs in this game, at least multiple defensive stops and 1 TFL. Byron Murphy was doing well, plugging up the gaps along the defensive line, too. There's so many guys I could shout out on the defense for great games. Jalen Ford had, I don't know how he didn't reach double-digit tackles for loss. I know he was at double-digit tackles. I know he was at 7 tackles after the first half, but he was great. Great senior night for him. All told, again, Texas Tech 198 yards, averages just over 3 yards per play. The passing game just was not there for them. So this is the best performance. I said the most complete performance I've seen, most dominant performance, I think, too, that Texas's defense has shown this season. And then the last takeaway I had was talking about Quinn Ewers. And, there was a lot of positives in this game for Texas on all sides of the ball, but I do think there's some things that you can take away from this game for Ewers that are areas that he needs to continue to improve. And, if he ends up coming back for another season, which it sounds like based off reports we got from the last 2 weeks that he probably will, this wasn't his best game. He ends up completing 17 of 26 attempts for under 200 passing yards. I think it was 196, 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception. When you see the scoreboard, you see 57-7 Texas winning. That you would probably expect Ewers to have a pretty big day. That was not necessarily the case. Ewers had some missed opportunities in this game. The interception he threw was an underthrown ball. I think bad fundamentally too to Adonai Mitchell. Braylon Lux winds up getting the interception on that one. Ewers took multiple sacks in this game. I think 2 sacks where he could have either evaded the pocket or stepped up and avoided that or thrown the ball away. In the last few games, there's been a lot of instances of that where he's had over 3 seconds in the pocket, and that's a good amount of time to figure out what to do with the ball, go through your progressions, and either throw the ball away or at least give your receiver a chance to make a play on it, and he's just eating it and taking a sack. It is better than him just throwing the ball up and taking an interception, but it's not what you need out of a guy that's been a guy that's got dang near 24 starts under his belt at quarterback, at least approaching that. And so need to see a little bit better from him in going through his reads, being able to, again, stay composed in the pocket, keep to his fundamentals. He's done a lot better in that regard this year. He is massively improved. I don't necessarily think this was a bad game for him by any means, but I do think it was a mediocre game where you had an opportunity to have, a big day at the office, build up your confidence heading into the Big 12 championship game, and really have his best performance at home since coming back from the shoulder injury that he suffered against Houston back in October. And so you do want to see a little bit more out of him down the stretch. Another one, the potential touchdown pass to Xavier Worthy. I actually don't think that was a poorly thrown ball, but I think it could have been better. That was just another one that kind of stuck out to me. But yeah, just in the last two games, I've kind of noticed that Ewers is having trouble getting to that second read whenever the first read isn't there, or the pocket starts to get blown up or starts to collapse on him, no matter the amount of time he has to throw. So the offensive line's been doing pretty well. I think that it probably should have been a 1 or 2 sack night. I think it ended up being 3 or 4. And I think some of those are on Ewers. But it's just a point of improvement for him. Again, he still has improved quite a bit this year. I think he's a much better quarterback than he was last season. That obviously reflects in the numbers. But he's still got things to work on, especially if he comes back next season. So those are my takeaways. I gave some nods to players on defense, and I think there's just so many players on defense you could give shout outs to. On offense, before I go through the film and really see some of the stuff from the offensive line, I don't really know there, but I do think the offensive line played pretty well in this game. One was really good run blocking, over 300 rushing yards as a team. Savion Red ends up finishing the game 9 carries, 72 rushing yards. I thought he ran the ball really well. This was really the first game for him with sustained carries. And Trey Wisner, 7 carries, 60 yards, his first rushing touchdown. He was running the ball well, in garbage time down the stretch. And so it was nice to see him get some work. Jonte Cook had a nice play for 17 yards. You got to see a lot of true freshmen get involved. Xavion Bryce had a nice pass breakup. I know he's not a true freshman, but still an underclassman. It was nice to see him get some reps on defense because it's really been a 4-man corner rotation this season. So, it's good to get guys that far down the depth chart, those types of reps against a Power 5 opponent on senior night. It's a rare thing. And so outside of that, I'll take a look at defense here right quick. On defense, Jet Bush, I should give a shout to. Maurice Blackwell is actually one that I want to. He ended up having, I think it was 5 tackles in this game. Had a tackle for loss and had 2 defensive stops. He, at least from my tallies, he's been really good since coming back from an injury, and so he deserves some shouts. And then Dre Bledsoe is the other one I meant to shout out because I believe he ended up coming with a tackle for loss and run defense. Had a quarterback pressure as well. He's been looking good in the reps he has gotten this season. And all around this defense, there's just so many players that you have to give nods to. The defense ends up, I think it was 7 pass breakups and 3 interceptions. At double-digit forced incompletions is something crazy against a team like Texas Tech that has been throwing the ball pretty well, at least efficiently in the last few games. So anyway, for Andrew Miller at Hook'emHeadlines.com, Hook'em Horn Show, keep it, stay tuned. I'll be at the Big 12 championship game next week. We'll see what happens for the college football playoff, or if Texas ends up in the Cotton Bowl, I will be there as well, depending on, again, what happens for Texas down the stretch this season. But anyway, for Andrew Miller at Hook'emHeadlines.com and the Hook'em Horn Show, that's pretty much it. Hook'em.